The stars were not silent, but the space between them had a weight, a hush that pressed against the hull of the Elysium Vanguard. Commander Leora Vale stood on the observation deck, her hands clasped behind her back, staring at the swirling vortex before the ship. The gate, an immense golden ring suspended in the void, was humming with a resonance that tickled the edges of the mind. Some called it music. Others called it warning. Humanity called it opportunity. "This is it," whispered Kale, her second in command, voice trembling with awe rather than fear. "We're really here." Leora turned to him, her expression calm, almost serene. She did not speak immediately. She let the hum fill her ears, her heart sinking with the pulse of the gate. There were rumors that other civilizations had tried before them. Billions of species, countless attempts, and none had returned. The laughter of alien observers, recorded by the few autonomous probes that survived, had echoed across the void. Fools. You do not understand what lies beyond. Yet humanity had learned patience in ways no other species had. They had survived plagues that killed continents, wars that tore civilizations into dust, and the slow, grinding despair of a planet slowly dying. And now in the cold, infinite space, the same resilience stretched into the stars. "Do you think they'll laugh at us too?" Kale asked almost nervously. "They already are," Leora said, and there was no bitterness in her tone. "Only understanding." "But laughter doesn't change what we are capable of," the crew gathered quietly. They were not nervous in the usual sense. They were prepared. Years of training, simulations, and mental conditioning had led to this exact moment. Each of them carried the memory of Earth's struggles, the loss, the hope, the tireless determination of millions who had dreamed of this day. "Gate coordinates locked," reported Anna, the navigator, her voice steady, alignment stable, energy threshold within operational parameters. The words were mundane, but the meaning was immense. One wrong calculation, one misread signal, and the entire expedition could vanish without a trace. Yet Leora's eyes never left the swirling light of the gate. She could almost see beyond it, not as a place, but as a promise. "A challenge. Remember," she said, finally turning to address the crew as a whole, "whatever waits beyond is unknown. That does not mean it is undefeatable. Humanity has always moved forward when others hesitated. We do not need to fear what we do not understand. We need only to act with courage and clarity." Silence followed, but it was not the uneasy kind. It was the deep, steady quiet of minds preparing for something greater than themselves. Outside the observation deck, the gate pulsed, a rhythmic vibration that seemed to sync with every heartbeat in the ship. Leora's hand hovered over the activation console. Kale's hand rested lightly on hers. In that simple touch was the weight of trust, of history, of human spirit. She took a deep breath. The moment was precise, suspended in the emptiness of space and the collective courage of a species that refused to bow. "Gate sequence initiated," she said. The hum grew into a roar, yet it did not frighten them. It was a challenge, a declaration. The universe was watching, perhaps amused, perhaps doubtful, but humanity did not flinch. Light flooded the observation deck, white and gold, and impossibly bright. Shapes twisted in the brilliance, impossible geometries that the human mind was not built to fully perceive. Some of the younger crew gasped. Some of the older closed their eyes to focus, but none retreated. "Engage," Leora commanded. The ship moved forward, calm, deliberate. The gate seemed to expand, a doorway that expected failure but encountered none. And somewhere in the vast silence, a distant laugh echoed, not from the crew, not from the ship, but from whatever eyes had been watching humanity for centuries. Yet humanity moved forward, always forward. The light swallowed them, and for a heartbeat the universe held its breath. And then, as the stars bent and twisted around them, Leora smiled. They had entered the next gate, calmly, fearlessly, humanly. The universe beyond the gate was not empty. It was a cathedral of impossible space, a realm where stars were tangled like threads in a cosmic loom, and planets floated in silent, deliberate orbits that defied any human law of physics. The Elysium Vanguard drifted, guided by instincts honed through years of preparation. Yet everything around them was alive in a way that was unsettling. Anna's hands flew over the console. "Sensors are registering something," she said, her voice uncertain but steady. "It's not matter, not energy, not time as we understand it. It's consciousness," Leora's eyes narrowed, not with fear but with curiosity, the kind that had driven humans to climb mountains, cross oceans, and pierce the veil of the atom. Define it, Anna. I can't, Anna admitted. It's like millions of minds moving at once. Whispering, watching. They're aware we're here. Kale's breath caught. You mean, it's an intelligence? Not one, Anna said. Many. And they're amused. Leora felt a familiar hum of anticipation in her chest. It was the same feeling that had carried humanity through the plagues, through wars, through centuries of struggle. The certainty that no challenge could break them, only teach them. The whispers grew. Shapes began to coalesce outside the ship. Fractured constellations, flickering lights that rearranged themselves like living mosaics. The crew watched, some transfixed, others holding tightly to the railings. It would have been terrifying for any other species, but humans were built from fear and hope in equal measure. They could stare at the abyss without letting it stare back too long. They're testing us, Leora said, voice calm, deliberate. They want to see how we react. Kale swallowed hard. Test us how? They could crush the ship with a thought. And yet, Leora said, here we are, uncrushed, unbroken. That is the first rule of survival, Kale. Not to panic, not to beg, not to hide, to move forward with clarity. The whispers grew louder, shifting into patterns almost comprehensible to the human mind. Your species is small, one seemed to say, though no sound escaped the hull. Transient, fragile, why do you persist? The crew looked at one another. The question was simple, yet loaded with millennia of implied contempt. Leora felt the weight of it, not just on the ship, but on the history of humanity itself. And yet she smiled softly, as if sharing a secret with the universe. Because we can, she said aloud, though the voices might never hear her in the way she intended. Because we endure. Because when everything tells us we cannot, we still try. That is what we are. The gate's light pulsed in response, as if considering her words. Shapes outside twisted faster, impossible geometries folding into themselves, yet no attack came. The Elysium vanguard moved steadily, calmly. Then came the first physical anomaly, the void shards. They appeared as jagged fragments of space, blacker than darkness itself, floating in patterns that made no sense. Ships of other species might have tried to flee, to calculate safe paths, to hide in the shadows. Humans did not. Evasive maneuvers? Kale asked. No, Leora said. Observe, understand, respond if necessary. Never before have we run from what we do not understand. That is not who we are. The crew obeyed. They adjusted shields, monitored readings, and allowed the shards to brush past the hull, grazing them like distant lightning. No harm came. The whispers laughed again, but there was something different now. Curiosity, challenge, recognition. Minutes, or was it hours, passed. Time bent and twisted in the gate's realm. Yet the human crew remained steady. Each of them carried not just training but memory. The fires their ancestors had survived, the losses they had endured, the victories carved from despair. A single thought crystallized in Leora's mind. They think fear will stop us. They think incomprehensibility will make us retreat. They are wrong. And as she gave the order to continue, the gate itself seemed to shimmer in acknowledgement. Not all would have dared. Not all would have understood. But humans, the stubborn, audacious, endlessly curious humans, moved forward calmly, steadily, embracing the unknown not with terror, but with deliberate grace. Somewhere in the twisting void, the laughter paused. A ripple of awareness. A silent note of surprise. And then, nothing, because humans were not simply another species to fail. Humans were a force of will, a proof that resilience was not a story told in whispers, but lived in every heartbeat of a fragile, brilliant creature that refused to yield. Leora's voice was soft but unwavering. We go further. Always further. And the Elysium vanguard obeyed. The Elysium vanguard moved deeper into the gate's uncharted expanse. Outside stars twisted and bled into streams of color no human eye had names for. Space itself seemed to shiver under a hidden will, and the crew felt it, an almost imperceptible pressure against thought, memory, and even emotion. The gate was not just a passage. It was a crucible, and humanity had been chosen to endure it. Kale stood at the observation deck, jaw tight. Leora, the readings. They're unstable. The universe itself is warping around us. I don't think the ship can withstand much more. Leora didn't flinch. Her calm, even tone cut through the tension like a blade. We will withstand it. Not because the ship is invincible, but because we are. Humans endure what the universe expects will break them. The crew exchanged glances, nerves taut, yet inspired by her certainty. Fear existed, yes, but it did not govern them. Humans had faced extinction on Earth, had endured famines, diseases, wars, and yet somehow found the courage to rebuild. That courage was alive in every hand on the Elysium Vanguard. The first trial came as silence. A silence so complete it seemed to erase thought. Communications flickered and died. Screens went blank. Even the hum of the ship vanished. The crew felt as though they were drifting in nothingness. Time itself seemed to stretch into a void. Leora stepped forward, her voice the only anchor. Stay calm, breathe, remember who we are. Minutes, or were they hours? Passed. Then the whispers returned, louder, sharper. They were no longer distant or mocking. They were probing. 1,000 voices in one, asking questions that cut deeper than any physical attack. What is courage? What is pain? Why do you cling to life when life is so fragile? Each crew member felt the questions like knives against their mind, dredging up memories, regrets, fears. Anna shivered, recalling the faces of her family left behind. Kyle's thoughts turned to the wars he had survived, the friends lost to human folly. Leora herself felt the pressure. Memories of mistakes, moments of doubt and despair threatening to overwhelm her calm exterior. But humans did not break. Not truly. Leora spoke again, steady and clear. We endure because we choose to. Pain is proof we live. Courage is proof we act despite fear. Our mistakes make us wiser, our losses make us stronger. That is humanity. Slowly the pressure lifted. The whispers, once aggressive, now seemed hesitant. They had expected collapse, weakness, retreat. And yet humanity remained. The second trial followed immediately. The shifting labyrinth. The stars rearranged themselves into walls, corridors, and traps. Space became a maze of impossible geometry. Sensors failed. Instruments reported contradictions. Distances that were infinite and finite at the same time. Paths that led back to themselves. Many species would have panicked, running in circles until destruction. Not humans. Trust instincts, trust each other, Leora said. She plotted a course not by maps or instruments, but by logic, intuition, and a deep understanding of human resilience. The crew followed, adjusting, questioning, observing, yet never hesitating. Each decision was deliberate, each movement careful but confident. The labyrinth twisted around them like a living entity, yet the humans did not falter. Where others might have seen only chaos, they saw patterns. Where others might have feared loss, they felt responsibility. Where others might have broken, they acted. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the Elysium Vanguard emerged. The stars realigned. Space seemed to exhale. The gate had tested them and failed to break them. Kale exhaled, the first genuine smile breaking across his face. We made it. We survived. Leora nodded, her gaze fixed on the next horizon. They expected fear. They expected retreat. They expected laughter. They were mistaken. Humans do not panic at the unknown. We understand it, we endure it, and we move forward. Somewhere in the labyrinth of the gate, a ripple of understanding, or perhaps surprise, passed through the alien consciousness that had tested them. The laughter they had expected to hear again was absent. Instead, there was respect. Not complete, not yet, but a recognition of something unfamiliar. Persistence without fear, clarity without hesitation, courage without arrogance. The first trial had ended. Humanity had passed, and yet the gate whispered still, hinting at greater challenges ahead. Leora's voice cut through the tension, calm and commanding. Prepare the ship. This is only the beginning. We go further. Always further. And we do so together. The crew understood. Whatever awaited beyond the next curve, the next shift in reality, the next test, they would face it. Not because they were invincible, but because they were human, and humans above all, moved forward when others faltered. And for the first time since entering the gate, the universe seemed to pause and truly take notice. The Elysium Vanguard drifted into a region where light itself seemed to hesitate, bending around invisible structures that defied comprehension. The crew's instruments screamed contradictions. Even the gate's hum had dulled, replaced by a subtle vibration that seemed almost alive. It was here, Leora knew, that the real test began. Not of courage, not of endurance, but of the human heart. Anna was the first to voice it. Commander, the readings. There's a presence. I can't describe it as anything but conscious. And it's choosing. Kyle frowned, unease creeping into his usually steady posture. Choosing what? To attack us? No, Anna said slowly. To make us choose. To see what we value. It's probing our morality, our priorities. It knows we're thinking, feeling, and it's waiting for a reaction. Leora closed her eyes for a moment, centering herself. Years of human history whispered to her. Empires had fallen not to armies, but to indecision. Families had torn themselves apart not for lack of courage, but for lack of clarity. This was no different. The universe, it seemed, demanded a human truth and would punish hesitation. She opened her eyes. Gather the crew, she commanded. We face a choice, one that tests not our bodies, but our humanity. The choice manifested as 3 shimmering pathways. Each path led to a separate vision projected directly into their minds. The first showed safety, an exit from the gate, wealth of knowledge, minimal risk. The universe would smile, allow them passage, but at a cost. The choice whispered, leave now, secure your survival. The second showed power, technology beyond comprehension, the ability to reshape worlds, dominion over galaxies. It demanded obedience to the gate's intelligence in exchange for this gift. The universe would test them, but submission promised reward. The third showed nothing. Darkness, uncertainty, endless effort, and the faintest glimmer of hope that if they acted with courage, clarity, and compassion, something extraordinary might await. No promises, no guarantee, only potential. The crew froze, hearts pounding. Many species would have chosen safety. Many would have succumbed to the temptation of power. Humanity had the capacity for fear, yes, but it also had the capacity for hope, trust, and defiance. Kale's voice trembled. We could survive, if we just take the first path. Yes, Leora said softly, and never know who we could become. We could be safe, but the gate was not built for safety. It was built for those willing to risk everything for what they cannot yet see. Anna's eyes shone with tears, for she understood the stakes. The second path, power. It could ensure our species' dominance. We could remake worlds. And yet, Leora said, her voice calm but unyielding, it would make us less than human. Power gained by submission is not strength. Courage gained by fear is not valor. We go forward not because we must survive, but because we must act rightly. One by one, the crew made their choice. They did not hesitate. They did not panic. They aligned with the third path. Darkness enveloped them briefly, cold and heavy, and then began to part like a curtain. Light returned, but it was different, softer, warmer, yet infinitely vast. And then the universe spoke, not with words, not with laughter, but with recognition. The intelligence behind the gate acknowledged them. They had passed the moral trial, not through fear, not through brute strength, but through choice. Humanity had chosen uncertainty over comfort, integrity over temptation, hope over despair. Kale exhaled, awe written across his face. We actually did it. We made the right choice. Leora smiled, not triumphantly, but with quiet certainty. We didn't make it easy. It never is. But we acted as humans always do when faced with impossible decisions. With courage, with clarity, and with compassion. That is why we endure where others fail. The gate responded. Pathways rearranged, light shifted, and the Elysium vanguard was guided forward deeper into the unknown. The whispers no longer tested. They observed with something akin to respect, though still distant, still alien. Yet Leora felt it in her chest. This was only the beginning. The gate would continue to test them, not only physically, but emotionally, morally, and spiritually. And humanity would continue to meet it, not with arrogance, not with violence, but with the quiet, unyielding defiance that had carried them from the plains of Africa to the stars. As the ship advanced, Leora spoke one final thought aloud, knowing her crew would hear and understand. They thought laughter would stop us. They thought fear would bind us. They were wrong. Humanity does not flinch. We choose, we endure, and we go forward. The gate pulsed brighter this time, as if acknowledging that it had finally met something it could not bend, could not break, something alive, brilliant, and entirely human. Beyond the moral trial, The gate unfolded in ways that no human mind could have fully imagined. Space became a living labyrinth of fractal structures and flowing energy, yet it was not hostile, at least not in the conventional sense. The challenge now was subtler, a test of perception, intuition, and the quiet strength of spirit. Kyle stared at the observation deck, voice tight. It's endless. The stars, the paths, they keep changing. I can't even tell if we're moving forward or back. Exactly, Leora said, calm as ever. The test is not speed, not avoidance, not victory. It is persistence, understanding, observation. Humanity endures because we do not measure the unknown in fear or expectation, but in courage and curiosity. Anna, seated at the navigation console, nodded slowly. Every path seems wrong until you take it. Then it shifts again. The gate, it's teaching us to think differently, to trust instinct in each other. And it was true. Every step forward revealed contradictions. One corridor of energy led to another that appeared to move backward in time. One fragment of space shimmered with alien geometry that twisted upon itself like a living mind. Yet the crew worked together, quietly, without panic, trusting their combined experience, intuition, and empathy. Hours, maybe days, passed. The gate fed on doubt, fear, and disunity. It projected visions of their deepest anxieties. Homes lost to natural disasters, friends and loved ones fading into memory, failures long buried but still vivid. Each member of the crew felt the weight of these visions, yet they did not allow themselves to succumb. Leora's voice cut through the disorienting visions. Do not fight them. Acknowledge, then release. Fear is a part of life, but it does not define us. Remember what we have endured. Remember who we are. Cale shook his head, a shadow of doubt crossing his features. But what if endurance isn't enough? What if the gate wants more than courage? That is why it has chosen us, Leora replied softly. It has seen countless species falter. It expects us to break. And yet we do not. We do not because our strength is not only in muscle or technology or numbers, but in our ability to act with clarity, compassion, and patience even in the face of incomprehensible uncertainty. The shadows of infinity began to coalesce into a singular form, a presence that filled the void around the Elysium vanguard. It was neither solid nor entirely energy. Its shape seemed to change depending on who looked at it. Sometimes a vast creature, sometimes a swirl of light, sometimes nothing at all. And yet they all felt it. Awareness, intelligence, and judgment. The gate's voice, or whatever this entity was, spoke directly into their minds. You are persistent. You endure. You do not break as others do. Yet persistence alone is not enough. Tell us, why should you continue? Why should you pass? The question was not rhetorical. It demanded truth, and there was no hiding in thought alone. Leora felt the weight of responsibility settle on her shoulders. She knew that this question was not just for her, but for all humanity. She closed her eyes, thinking of every challenge ever faced by humans. The famines and plagues, the wars and betrayals, the nights of despair and the mornings of hope. She thought of children learning to walk, people rising after defeat, societies rebuilding from ruins. Because we choose to, she said aloud, her voice steady. Because we endure not for reward, but because that is the nature of life. Because our failures teach us, our losses strengthen us, and our hope drives us. Because we do not give in to despair and we do not laugh at the suffering of others. We continue because continuing is who we are. A silence followed, a silence that seemed to stretch across galaxies. Then slowly the shape began to dissolve. The impossible structures of the gate softened. Light returned to something resembling normal space. The entity's judgment had passed, not in malice, not in amusement, but in acknowledgement. Humanity had answered correctly, not through strength, not through cunning, but through essence. Cale exhaled, trembling. We made it, again. Leora looked at the crew, her eyes calm but fierce. We are not invincible. We are not perfect. But we are human. That is enough. That has always been enough, and it will always be enough. Outside, the gate's fractal structures began to resolve into a path of clarity, a luminous corridor stretching toward an unknown horizon. But the trials were not over. The whispers had ceased, the shadows dissolved, but the universe held more tests in reserve. And the humans, calm and deliberate, would face them as they always had, together, unyielding, and without fear. Somewhere in the vastness, The alien observers, the ones who had laughed for centuries, paused. They had underestimated the species that persisted not through dominance or cunning, but through unwavering clarity and courage. For the first time, the laughter was replaced by something closer to curiosity, and humanity moved forward, ever forward, toward the next impossible horizon. The Elysium Vanguard had traveled farther than any human ship before. Stars bent into patterns no map could chart. Space itself seemed alive, shifting in response to the ship's presence. The gate, once merely a passage, now felt like a sentient labyrinth, testing them at every turn. But the trials had grown darker, not in light or shape but in intent. Shadows manifested, not physical but psychological. Each crew member saw their deepest fears, every regret and doubt projected into the void. The gate's intelligence no longer whispered, it pressed, probing the limits of courage and unity. Kyle gripped the railing, pale. It's personal now. It's showing us ourselves, Leora. Everything we've feared. Everything we've failed at. Yes, Leora said quietly. Her gaze remained on the shifting void outside. It wants us to break internally, to surrender to despair. But that is not how humans survive. Anna, seated at the navigation console, voice trembling, added, It's memories. People we've lost, mistakes we can't undo. It's everywhere. Leora's eyes softened with understanding. We carry all of it, yes, but we are not defined by the shadows we see. We are defined by what we do despite them. That is humanity. That is why we endure. The shadows coalesced into forms. Friends long gone, voices from childhood, regrets spoken aloud in faceless mouths. They pleaded, mocked, and warned. One shape approached Leora directly, her younger self, terrified, begging her not to enter the gate, insisting it was too dangerous, that they would fail. She knelt before the apparition, calm but resolute. I hear you, she said. I see you. But I am not just you. I am every human who has ever endured loss and chosen hope anyway. We do not step back from the unknown. We move forward. The shadow trembled and dissipated. Others faltered, yet the crew, inspired by Leora's unwavering calm, reached for one another. They reminded each other of their strengths, their purpose, and their shared history. They did not deny fear. They embraced it, understood it, and let it strengthen their resolve. Cale spoke, voice steadying. It's testing more than courage now. It's testing unity. If it can isolate us, it can destroy us. But together. He trailed off, realizing the truth. Yes, Leora said, eyes glimmering with quiet fire. Humans are stronger together. Individually, we are fragile. But together, we are unstoppable. That is why we survive where others fail. The shadows surged one final time, a wave of darkness that threatened to consume the ship. Instruments failed, lights flickered, and the void seemed to twist into impossible angles. Yet the humans did not panic. Calmly, they adjusted shields, synchronized movements, and focused on the path forward. Not the threat itself, but their response to it. The gate's hum changed, resonating with their collective courage. The shadows recoiled, dissipating into the void, leaving only the faintest echo of their presence. The crew exhaled together, feeling the weight of survival, of shared triumph over impossible fear. Leora turned to them, voice unwavering. They expected fear. They expected despair. They thought we would crumble when faced with our own shadows. They were wrong. We endure because we act with clarity and courage, even when the universe shows us everything we dread. Anna smiled through tears. We're human, she said softly. That's our strength. The gate's labyrinth shifted once more, revealing a corridor of light stretching endlessly into the unknown. No traps, no illusions, no shadows, only the path forward. The intelligence that had tested them remained silent now, observing. Perhaps for the first time it recognized the depth of the species it had encountered. Cale looked at Leora. What now? Now, she said, her voice calm but fierce, we continue, because fear will always exist. Shadows will always appear. But humanity moves forward anyway. The ship advanced into the corridor. Outside, the stars glimmered as if applauding, not with noise but with presence. Somewhere in the vastness, the gate's observers paused, perhaps realizing that they had underestimated humans for centuries. And humanity moved forward, unbroken, resolute, and aware that their greatest power was not technology, not knowledge, not even courage, but the choice to face the impossible, together. With calm and unwavering spirit, the Elysium Vanguard pressed on, deeper into the unknown, carrying not just a crew, but the essence of humanity itself, unyielding, compassionate and endlessly resilient. The Elysium Vanguard floated at the edge of the final corridor, where light and shadow merged into a singular brilliance. The stars here were no longer distant points, but vast, radiant oceans stretching infinitely in every direction. The gates, trials relentless and unyielding, had tested their courage, morality, and unity. Now, at the threshold of eternity, humanity faced its ultimate challenge, one that even the gate itself could not fully define. The crew stood together on the observation deck, hearts steady, eyes wide with awe. The alien intelligence that had watched, tested, and mocked for eons was silent now. For the first time, its presence felt curious, respectful, perhaps even uncertain. Kyle broke the silence, voice low but awed. We made it, all of it, every test, every shadow, every impossible choice. Leora's gaze remained fixed on the light. Yes, but it is not enough to survive. Survival is the baseline. What the gate seeks is proof that we are worthy, not just to pass, but to inspire, to endure, to create meaning in the face of infinity. Anna's hands trembled slightly as she adjusted the ship's controls. There's nothing left to measure. No traps, no visions. The path is open, but it's like the universe itself is asking, what will we do with this chance? Leora smiled softly. Exactly, and that is the human answer. We do not conquer for the sake of power. We do not yield to fear. We move forward, not because it is easy, not because we are guaranteed success, but because moving forward is who we are. The gate pulsed gently, as if acknowledging her words. Then came the first ripple of the impossible. A bridge of light extending into a vast, uncharted expanse. The Elysium Vanguard moved forward calmly, deliberately. The alien intelligence observed, perhaps anticipating hesitation, perhaps expecting fear. But there was none. Humans did not flinch. Humans did not hesitate. A voice, if it could be called that, echoed across the void. You have endured every trial. You have chosen courage over comfort, unity over division, hope over despair. Yet why do you persist when the unknown offers neither reward nor guarantee? Leora stepped forward, voice calm, steady, but carrying the weight of humanity's collective spirit. Because we must. Because existence is a gift to act upon. Because every generation before us endured unimaginable odds, and we honor them by moving forward. Humanity persists not for reward, but because persistence itself is our legacy. We create meaning where others see only void. That is why we continue. The intelligence paused. Light shimmered and twisted, forming patterns beyond comprehension. For centuries it had observed countless species, each faltering, each breaking under fear or arrogance. And yet, humanity, fragile, flawed, mortal, had endured with clarity, calm, and courage. It had faced darkness, illusions, and impossible choices, and it had never surrendered. Then, for the first time, the gate responded not with challenge, but with passage. The corridor opened fully, revealing a universe unbounded, a horizon unending. The observers, the intelligence that had once laughed at humanity, remained silent, perhaps unable to fathom what it had witnessed. A species that did not flinch, did not panic, did not falter. Kale exhaled, voice trembling with awe. We're beyond everything they thought we could be. Yes, Leora said softly. Not because we are perfect, not because we are invincible, but because we are human. And humanity always moves forward. The Elysium Vanguard advanced into the uncharted expanse, carrying not just explorers, but the essence of humanity itself. Courage without arrogance, hope without naivety, clarity without hesitation. The gate behind them shimmered, then faded, its tests concluded. And somewhere in the vast, silent universe, the observers who had once mocked humanity now understood a truth they had never expected. Resilience, morality, and courage combined in a species that would shape the cosmos in ways no one else could. Humanity had opened the next gate, not with force, not with fear, not with cunning, but with calm, deliberate, unyielding will. And the universe, vast and infinite, watched. Leora turned to her crew, eyes shining with pride and serenity. "They laughed too early," she said quietly. And we calmly opened the next gate. The stars stretched before them, limitless and brilliant. And for the first time in history, humanity moved into the unknown, not as prey, not as guests, but as equals, resilient, courageous, and profoundly alive. The voyage continued. The gate's universe awaited, infinite and mysterious. And humanity, calm and unbroken, moved forward.